Picture this, it's 2011 and the web is on the brink of a 3D revolution. WebGL, a game-changing API, arrives on the scene, empowering developers to create intricate designs, 3D designs, compatible with most web browsers. But it's not a walk in the park. Mastering WebGL meant delving into the depths of JavaScript, Java, Objective-C along with GLSL, which is a shader language, to program these captivating graphics that you've seen. I remember spending hours trying to understand how these shader programs work just to get a very basic graphics implemented. Fast forward to today and the landscape has transformed dramatically. Tools like Spline have democratized 3D web design, turning what was once a realm for experts into a playground for creative minds of all skill levels. And in this video, we're going to be taking a leap into this world. We'll be designing and publishing a live website like this with great 3D artifacts, all generated by AI, imported to Spline for interactions, and embedded into Framer for getting it live. Let's get started. Okay, creating a 3D interactive website like this is going to be a very simple 3-step process. Number one, we're going to use generative AI to create a 3D model. So we'll be using Genie by Luma AI for this. The second step, we're going to import that model that we generated into Spline for creating the interactions that we desire. And number three, we're going to embed the Spline scene into a Framer AI generated layout to get it published. Okay, to generate the 3D model, we'll be using Luma AI, link below in the show notes. So Luma AI uses something called neural radiance fields, or NERF, which is a fancy way of saying that it can take normal pictures and turn them into amazing 3D images. It's like taking a photo and then stepping inside to look around. Recently, they've gotten into the world of generating 3D assets from text prompts, and that's what we're going to be using today. Okay, so what you want to do is click on the hamburger menu here and go into that Discord app. It's going to take a second to load, and once you are into the Discord channel, if you haven't signed up for Discord, you might have to sign up. Once you are into their Luma AI channel, you want to actually go into one of these Genie channels and you type /Genie and a prompt of what you want. So and here we're trying to create succulents. So what I'm going to say is I want to create a row of succulents on a walnut table. Then you hit enter and it's going to take a while for it to generate the 3D assets. So after you prompt, generates 4 different variations of the 3D models that you would like to further refine on. I really like the third one over here, so I'm going to go ahead and click refine 3. And now what this does is it focuses on that very specific design idea and it creates a more detailed, high fidelity version of it that you can download and use. So it takes a while to render. Once it does refine, it creates a high fidelity version of the option that you had generated. You can click on view/download and you would want to give permissions to visit the site. And once you do, what you can see over here is that it's created this really sweet high definition 3D image. So essentially you've just created a 3D model from a text prompt. Now what you can do a few things over here. You can go ahead and retain the default lighting, but I usually like to go ahead and create my own custom lighting. I'd like to increase the metalness and reduce the roughness, and I also like to give this sort of a more natural sunlight color as a light source. I would go ahead and we'll probably change that to something like this and increase the roughness a little more, and there we go. Now you have a very sharp 3D image generated from a text prompt. Now what you can do next is you go ahead and click on download GLB and it downloads the file that you can then import onto Spline. So going back to our reference image of what we want to create, we created this group of succulents and we also want to create these individual succulents which are also 3D images. So what you'd want to do for that is open up Discord again, and you notice that I have a prompt, say /Genie, and a small highly detailed succulent, and that generated 4 different options for me, and I went ahead and refined number 2 because I really like that, and this is what I got. And if I were to actually view this on the browser, you can see how this will look. It's generating, and this is what it looks like. Again, this is extremely detailed. You can see all the textures, you can see the lighting. I would like to play around with the lighting a bit. Not a big fan of how bright this looks. I'm going to go ahead and again give that natural sun source and then increase the metalness a little more, and then go ahead and download the GLB, and then we can use this in our Spline file. Okay, now on to step 2. We'll be using Spline to create the 3D embeds by importing the assets that we just created from Luma AI. If you've not heard of Spline before, think of Spline like a digital art set like Photoshop or Illustrator, but for 3D stuff. Spline's capabilities extend to both creating 3D designs from the ground up and importing pre-rendered models from other software, hence allowing for a very robust design process. The tool empowers designers to transform what traditionally required weeks of development into a matter of hours, streamlining the workflow for 3D web experiences very straightforward. So go ahead and click login, and it takes you to a very Figma-like familiar interface, but all stuff 3D. Go ahead and click on new file, and it gives you a set of templates that you can begin with. I usually like to begin with studio lighting because it does all the lighting effects for you. So go ahead and click that. It renders a scene for you where it has all the lighting taken care of, and it also has a backdrop which you can play around with. You have a directional light that essentially defines how the scene is being lit, and then you have a demo cube created over here which you can go ahead and select delete. Now next, what you want to do is go ahead and actually unlock this backdrop, select it, and you might want to actually give this a color that we're thinking about for our website. Give this a different shade of green, and that should do the job, and lock the backdrop again. What you want to do next is import the 3D assets that we just created from Luma AI. So go ahead and click on import over here, and what we're essentially importing are GLB files, which kind of falls under a 3D model section of it. So you go ahead and click on a 3D model and get it from your downloads, and you can see that the row of succulents is being imported. You just got to go ahead and move this to the center, and now you can see that the row of succulents that we generated is actually now in your 3D design tool, and you can view this in 3 dimensions across different perspectives, and you can just see all the details over here. So if you actually go ahead and clicked on this, and if you went inside the image of the materials, you'll notice that it's UV wrapped the image that is essentially on top of the 3D model. It just feels like magic, considering that all of this came from an AI tool, and I did absolutely nothing of this, which would have taken me at least a few hours to get this level of details right. Next, what we want to do is go ahead and import the other succulents as well. So this is a small, highly detailed succulent is what we created. There we go. We have the other succulent imported as well and placed within the same plane. We want to move this a little further behind, this a little closer, and you want to rearrange the scene based on your liking. What you're doing next is going to be creating this interaction where you click on this group of succulents, and it transitions, and you have a text that shows up. So that's what we're going to be creating now. So what we need to do for that is add a different state for this row of succulents. So what you're going to be doing is you're going to be clicking on states over here and assign the base state to be this, and you want the state to be something where this transitions. And now what you want to do is you want to add text, and you want to place the text somewhere here, and I'm just going to write soccer for succulents. Now you don't really see this because I believe this is below the backdrop, so what you want to do is you want to move it up. Now you can see it. Next you want to add a font. I'm going to change this to something called Limelight, font which I've been liking. Center align it, increase the bounds by a bit so that it's contained within. Change the color to white. There we go. And what I usually like to do with text is to actually give it a little bit of extrusion, so that essentially means it's got a little bit of depth to it. There we go. And you want to rotate it about 60 to 70 degrees so that it looks, so that the perspective is looking at the user. And what you want to do finally is to actually pull this towards the user. This is looking good. You want to pull it down a little and then click this and go back to the base state, and just to see that it's completely hidden. It's not completely hidden, I still see a little bit of the text there, so what I'm going to end up doing is pushing it down a little more and go back to the base state. There you go, it's completely hidden the text now. We want to add an interaction, and what we do right now is go to events, add an event, on mouse down, we're adding a transition, and that transition is that it moves from the base state to state, and let that be a spring animation. Everything else looks good. Now if I were to go ahead and play this, you'll notice that if I click this, there we go, that's the animation that we wanted. Okay, now that we have the interaction working, what we need to be doing last on Spline is to go ahead and actually create an export link. So what we want to be creating is a public URL so that we can share and embed it. It takes a bit to actually generate that URL right now, but in the meantime, while it's generating, we can go ahead and tweak the play settings. So what we want to be doing is we want to make sure the background color is shown, the page scroll no, you want the cursor default is fine. We don't want this to orbit by default, you can turn all these off. Soft orbit is fine. You don't want any touch settings, no panning. We do want an hover effect, so you turn this on, and you have the orbit camera, you turn the sensitivity down a little bit, and there we go. So now you have a link that's generated, and let's go ahead and update the public URL. And once that's done, all you need to do is just copy this link and then import it onto Frame. Okay, now on to step 3. That is importing the 3D model that we just created into an AI generated landing page on Framer. I spoke about Framer in my previous video. Very quickly, Framer is a very familiar Figma-like canvas that enables designers to deploy any of your designs onto a live website in a few simple clicks. So what we're going to be doing is we're going to be creating a new project on Framer. Once that loads, what we are also going to be doing is generating an initial page using AI. I'm going to say a personal blog for a plant lover who collects succulents. Let's see what Framer AI generates. Okay, that's a start. It's generated a hero section with a few images, and it's also created different breakpoints. I got a desktop, tablet, and phone breakpoint. I'm going to primarily work on the desktop breakpoint for the sake of brevity. So let's say I want this to be a little more in tune with the theme of succulents, so maybe something that has a tint of green is what I'm going to go with. So these are some pre-selected palettes that Framer automatically generates. I like this one. I don't need this section right here, so I'm just going ahead and delete it. I also probably don't need this geometry that it's created because we're going to add our own hero section, so I'm going to delete this as well. I do like the font, so I'm going to need this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to reduce the font size a bit so that the emphasis is more on the 3D model. And we're also going to go change this distribute to start so that the succulents is right at the top. Now we have this frame that's created with a bunch of graphics, which I'm going to go ahead and delete. Okay, now we have this hero section. What we're going to do next is go to insert. We need something called an embed utility that I need to insert over here. Now I want this to take the entire size of the intro, and I'm going to change the position to absolute. There we go, and that takes the entire hero section's width and height. All we need to do is go and grab the URL that was generated on Spline. So you go to Spline, copy this link, go to Framer, enter the URL here, and it takes a bit to load, and then it loads hero section that we just generated. Now if I were to go and deploy the site to preview it, you can see that it actually loads, and you actually have the entire 3D scene that you created on your website now. If I were to click this, the interaction still works, succulents, and you have the rest of the sections that have been auto-generated for you using Framer AI. And that's a wrap today. Hope you found this informative and learned something new. All the assets that we created today are available for download in the show notes below. Feel free to download and use them. All these advancements in 3D design and AI are democratizing creativity, allowing designers from all walks of life to bring their visions to life with unprecedented ease and precision. I do believe that AI is helping us automate the mundane. What we saw today helped us automate visual and aesthetic parts of the design process. This means it leaves more time for us to focus on the more important parts of building a product. I'd love to see what amazing 3D designs that you come up with using these tools. Share your creations in the comments below, and if you like this video, subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you in the next one.